Hello everyone, I thought I'd just do a little review for Star Wars Rogue One because I saw that earlier today, and I was quite impressed with it actually. I saw The Force Awakens last year and I didn't really like that. It felt to me, far too much of a cash-in movie in the sense that it was like all references to Episode 4 or the original Star Wars constantly. Sort of like, oh, remember this, remember this, remember this. Whereas this, I felt, was a much more independent film with its own sort of actual story, not just a rehash story like The Force Awakens had. So I really enjoyed it, and obviously I only saw it today, so there might be things I think about later that I didn't particularly like with it. But it was its own film, which I sort of appreciate because I think the problem with the Star Wars films is, and I'm only really a fan of the original Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back. Return of the Jedi's alright, but Return of the Jedi is one of those films where you can start seeing what's going wrong with the trilogy. And obviously you've got the prequels, which are pretty much awful. There's some good bits in it. John Williams' soundtrack to the prequels were good, but for the most part the prequels are very boring. The dialogue's awful. It's not particularly good in the old Star Wars, but there was action and interesting things to look at with all the models and things like that, where as sort of the prequels, obviously everybody knows why they're not great, because it's lots of boring, not very well thought out political dialogue, sort of very forced line delivery. It's just not very interesting. And Rogue One was very much its own thing, which is why I like it, because sort of it reminded me a bit of when you had all the Star Wars games back in the sort of 90s when they released a lot of the good ones, and early 2000s, where obviously LucasArts made them and they were sort of separate things in the Star Wars universe but not necessarily tied into all the films, like Star Wars Dark Forces was. And the funny thing is, the first bit of Star Wars Dark Forces where you had to get the Death Star plans, now obviously that's not canon anymore because it's sort of done in this film, but there's lots of tributes to things like that. One thing I'll say that's a bit spoilery, because I don't really want to go too much into spoilers other than the fact that I really like the film, is they have a CGI recreation of Peter Cushing in it for Grand Moff Tarkin, which I thought was really well done, because I don't like CGI in movies basically as a rule. I think CGI is good when you use it for things that you can't, actually do CGI of, if that make like stuff of real stuff. So if you're doing it for like planets that don't exist, but you could always use a matte painting for that. Sorry, it's come out a bit jumbled, but I'm sure you know what I mean, where CGI is good when you're using it for stuff you couldn't normally do, or to complement normal things in a film, not to completely replace actors in scenes and things like that. And because Peter Cushing's dead, obviously they had to get permission from his estate, and now they've got a very well done CGI. There's lots of people complaining, saying it wasn't very well done, but I personally think it was well done. I saw the film in 3D, and that might have helped with that, because when you're watching a film in 3D with the goggles, like the glasses on, and it's kind of that slightly blurry 3D, I think you can notice a bit less when something's done on the computer, because the edges aren't as soft and they, it all blends in a bit better to your eyes. As for the 3D version of the film, I thought for the most part the 3D was very good, especially in scenes where you might have a corridor and there's meant to be a bit of depth. What didn't work so well was some of the scenes where the camera focus isn't quite in focus. That's not very nice to look at, because obviously you've got an image that's slightly blurry, then with 3D effects on it, which sort of hurts, give you a bit of a headache. And then also some of the 3D in some of the shots, there wasn't anything in particular, but just didn't look quite right. Whereas in some shots you had very good foreground, background composition. It wasn't really one of those films where the 3D appears to come straight out the screen. It was more one of those films where, a bit like with a VR headset, you get very good depth perception. So stuff that's meant to be in the foreground looks closer, stuff in the background looks further away. So all in all, I thought Rogue One was very good, and that pleased me because, as I said, I wasn't very impressed with The Force Awakens. So, but then again, I'm not a massive Star Wars fan. I only really like the original one and Empire, and Return of the Jedi's alright. So, yeah, thumbs up. I'd recommend you see it. It's a lot better, in my opinion, than The Force Awakens, as said, and outside of the original trilogy, it's probably the best Star Wars film made.